Hey, y'all. Hello, hello. Happy Thursday. Almost May. Tomorrow's Mayday. Mayday, Mayday. Exactly. Mayday is also a good thing, though. Like there used to, I don't know where, I don't know if it's even American, but there used to be like a celebration. There would be a maypole and everybody would dance around the maypole. I did it once in elementary school. I don't know anything else about May 1st. Yeah. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised you haven't heard of that. Um, I don't know where it comes from. Maybe I'll look that up sometime. May Day celebrations, whether or not they still exist. But also, yeah, May Day as in please help. How are you today? Stressed. It's that time. It's that time. May is a very stressful time. If you're in a place where you're out of school by the end of, hello, if you're in a place where you're in 3 streams back to back, oh my gosh, what are they? What else happens on Monday? Oh, Thursday. Today's Thursday. I'm so confused. I don't know what day is what. Okay, Psych, US History. And US History again, back to backs, and oh, like a regular and a cram, like a free and a cram. That's a lot. Okay, well, I'm going to get going so that anybody who has that schedule can get on it. I would like to make the announcement now that I'm going to need to move Monday's stream. I think to Tuesday, but everybody's got so many conflicts. But I'll put that in the email. And it'll go up on Fiveable, but probably Tuesday, maybe late, like 9 p.m. Eastern. I don't know. But again, if you can't catch it live, you can catch the replay and it'll be fine. All right, so today we're talking about, and also if you watch a replay and you miss a live stream and you watch a replay and then you have any questions that come up, feel free to ask them in the next stream. That's completely okay. We're all a little family here, so my timeline is far less important than what you actually need. So let's go. Again, my usual announcement about Fiveable having a TikTok. I hope that makes people happy. I hear there was some sort of Fiveable Instagram takeover recently. These things are beyond they're not beyond my comprehension. I understand TikTok and Instagram takeover. Okay, we have 3 streams left, including the Crathon, because next week is the last full week before the exam. And again, I don't want to stress you out with the countdown, but the beginning of May means less than 2 weeks. So the next one on, oh, nice. So we have an ID taker over, or what are you called when you do a takeover? The taker over. You are a taker over, Sumi. Anyway, yeah, Sumi can answer that, what exactly an ID takeover is, but it's, it's what it sounds like. People come and take over the IG, or, it's like Fiveable's IG. So on Monday, we'll have an open practice, which means a kind of guided prompt practice where you get to ask any questions you want, and we can collaborate a little on the analysis. And then Thursday, we're going to have another essay. That's 2 essays in a week. But it's going to be good practice. And also, you won't have to set aside more time for it because it's going to happen in the stream. So on Thursday, next week, we're going to have timed writing, but I'm not going to really be a part of it. You guys can talk to each other, but I'm not really going to, be as guided, be as present. I mean, I'll be present, but I won't be as involved. Gosh, that was hard. And then the day before the exam, we'll have a, I'm calling it a promptathon, 5-hour CRAM stream. Details on that to come, but know that, it will involve writing, because that's the exam. You wouldn't be studying for the exam if there wasn't writing. So when you were writing the prompt for Fahrenheit 451, you went way over the time limit, and it's tough, right? And so I think that one of the things that one of the reasons why I really want to have these 2 streams next week is because it helps keep you accountable for the time. Like, you have to, you're there with everybody else and everybody's keeping time, you have to stop, and that'll help you get it right for the exam on the 13th. And also just help you know what takes your time. Like, does it take you a long time to read? Does it take you a long time to get a thesis? Once you get a thesis, are you rolling, or does that come quickly? That sort of thing. We'll be able to have some conversation about that. Also, I'm not going to have any homework practice prompts next week because we're already doing two prompts in the week. And so I will look at those, but I'm not going to post one in the community because we already have the 2 in the stream, and they'll be different. Mondays will be different from Thursdays. So today's symbolism. And so I wanted to have symbolism be the last kind of review topic, because symbolism is everything else, right? Everything that we've talked about, setting, character, diction, syntax, it kind of all rolls into symbolism, figurative language. And symbol is its own huge thing that happens. And you might get some symbols that might be something that you were able to identify and analyze in 2 weeks. So I just want to kind of be more clear about it. I've mentioned a lot of symbolism in our analysis of other concepts and topics. And so I just wanted to kind of throw out a bunch of things with a little more clarity. And then kind of review the symbols that we've seen in the work that we've done in the CRAM sessions. And then I'm going to give you a passage with lots and lots of symbols in it, and give you time to construct some work. Okay, so symbolism. The definition is a person, place, or object, feeling suggests more than its literal meaning. Another definition that I like is a concrete object with an abstract meaning. It's just something that means more than it means, right? And so it's like even the definitions of symbols are a little bit like complicated and abstract, but it's just something that represents something greater than itself. And so we run into universal symbols all the time. The flag stands for America, or our flag, the American flag stands for America, obviously, but also like the eagle is a symbol for America. Just all sorts of things. We have logos that become symbols, like that kind of thing. But then also we have general understandings that we run into, and you're like, oh, that represents this. What a handshake represents. Now we don't have a handshake, and the lack of a handshake is also symbolic, right? It's symbolic of our times, of our pandemic. We used to be able to. Sometimes people put symbolism on things that might not exist, like when the Obamas did a fist bump and it was characterized as terrorist. That sort of thing. We place symbolism on things that doesn't represent that to that person. And so symbolism is like figurative language, right? A lot of it has to come with intention. And so there's going to be a difference between symbolism we understand in our daily lives, symbolism that we expect to see in literature, and then symbolism that is created by the authors. So to kind of divide those, we're going to call those conventional, literary, and then contextual. Is symbolism a literary device? Yeah, for sure. So one of the things is that sometimes you miss symbolism, and also that symbols are really well developed in novel length texts. So in a prose passage, like on the exam, in a passage that's short, it's going to have to be very strong for you to identify it as a symbol. Because if it's something that's mentioned with another meaning, then it's probably just figurative language. But if it's something that pops up that evolves over time, that you understand that this is something that's shared between the characters, that has meaning for the characters that's greater than that object, then you could use it as a literary device. So, you know, it's kind of hard to see. It's kind of hard to say. I mean, symbolism is like pornography. You know it when you see it. What's the difference between a symbol and a motif? A motif is a pattern, whereas a symbol is an idea. So that's tough because symbols can be a part of a motif. I think I'm going to help make that distinction a little bit later in a couple slides, but you could be given a dozen red roses, and you would know that those red roses symbolize that person's love for you. But if every Wednesday that person brings you red roses, then they've made their roses a motif. Does that make sense? Okay, good. And sometimes a motif is a group of symbols also. And so that, you know, like a few different things come together to build a motif because maybe the symbol is a little different for different characters or different places. Okay, so symbols illuminate the story, but also the meaning of the story illuminates the symbol. So that's, again, paradoxical. It's really very difficult to pinpoint. It's like hard to define, but easy to analyze. So that's a good thing. A motif can be symbolic, but a symbol doesn't have to be a motif. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Okay, let's see. So let's talk about this. So there are some things that we understand both in literature and outside in figurative language. These are the kinds of things that would be created by diction and syntax. Also, that you might just understand. When you see it, you're like, oh, that's going to stand for this. So the idea that spring, rising sun, green and yellow, these things are going to be fresh. They're going to be, you know, golden is going to be something that is either very precious or very luxurious. So if you see that color, whereas yellow itself might be more like sunshine, more like bright. And then so, and I've said this in a few different streams, but the idea that a day, a year, and a life have very similar like markings in them, right? So, you know, birth, sunrise, spring are all going to be the beginning, and then kind of they're all fading every season, every phase of the day until we get to midnight, which is winter, which is black, which is the opposite of birth. Also, back to that idea of juxtaposition, right? The juxtaposition of something is symbolic, like black versus white, like red versus blue. Politics, but when they pit people against people, that can be symbolic. These are the kinds of things that you just, you know, you expect to see. So just a reminder, I gave you Story of an Hour a few streams ago, right? Talking about the interaction of the character and the setting, and that became symbolic because the blue sky outside of her window represented her freedom. So that parallel was made. And obviously, the heat of the day is going to be far more passionate because you sweat, and sweat apparently equals sex. If any of you have read How to Read Literature Like a Professor, that's a book. Yeah, I figured there would be a question on that one. If you've read How to Read Literature Like a Professor, that's a book that a lot of AP English teachers give. It establishes a lot of symbolism that you'll see. And one of the chapters is titled It's All About Sex. And then the next chapter is titled Accept Sex. So like things that sex very rarely symbolizes an actual like coming together. There must have been so many symbols I didn't get. And you might not. Like symbols might have passed you by. But I just want you to kind of have your symbolism antenna up. So yeah, that was hyperbolic that sweat means sex. But you know, a lot of times when something is supposed to be very passionate, the people are very hot. You know, you get all heated up because your body heats up the technical definition of arousal, right? When something excites you, you get warm like that. And then you flush. like in that passage. Now I can't remember who flashed. Okay. Literary symbols, though, all of those things, if you see them in a story, they'll mean that thing, but also setting, think about north versus south. The south is always going to be messier, dirtier, hotter, more negative. So that's a thing. If something is set in the south, you expect it to be, you can expect it to be dirty in some way. And that's anything that's south of anything else. It's kind of wild, but just up is nice, and south is down, right? So it's like the opposite of nice. So if something is set in the south of America, if it's set in Southern Europe, a lot of times Shakespeare would set things in Italy when he wanted to show that things were like uncivilized and rowdy, because those Italians, they're just uncivilized and rowdy, according to Elizabethan British people. So think about that, where something happens. Also, that same idea, like civilized versus savage. If you've read Heart of Darkness, you know that the deeper they got into Africa, the crazier everybody got. And then, you know, warm versus cold, it could imply something about the characters. It could imply where the plot will take you, any of those things. So pay attention to how hot it is, how cold it is, because obviously cold is going to be more polite. It's going to be less emotional, because apparently people in the southern areas of places are more emotional and uncivilized than people in the north. I don't know. I think that's probably not very arguable. It doesn't even make any sense. But especially if you see a text that is older, then you might find those connotations. I also disagree, but I am from the West, so I don't even know what that means. Also, I've lived in New York, and that's a pretty rowdy place. Okay, so think about that. Think about the setting. So time, all these things work together, right? Time of day, time of year, time of day, time of year, the age of a person. These things all could be symbolic. And then also, so if you are set in the South in the middle of the day, in the summertime, something hot is going to happen. It's going to be steamy in some way. You know, people use these things. But then on the other hand, I'm giving you all of this, and then somebody could subvert the symbol, and then you are confused because you're like, it's supposed to mean this. How would you make that an essay? Yeah. So I would say that, like, if you see that it's set in the South or in the middle of the day and or in the summertime, and then things do get messy, then you would then that would be part of your argument, that the symbolism of the setting foreshadows the conflict or tension. Right. So The Rise of Watching God is the southest that you can get, really, in the United States. And there was, so also, that's another example of climate, right? Because that hurricane came through and was very symbolic of not only them being in the storm together, Janie and TK were their own storm. And then also it blew everything kind of away, and she ended up in the eye, right? All of that, and then rain can be either clarifying or the opposite of clarifying, muddling, right? So if you get muddy, then you clearly things are getting confused, but rain also washes things away. And so that's really what the hurricane did in The Rise of Watching God. Okay, character names also can be symbolic. We talked about Clarice. We talked about Guy, because Guy's name is Guy. So you know that he's just, average guy. And then like people who don't have names, that also is something to pay attention to. Oceans, water, anytime you have water, you want to think about, again, is it clarifying or is it muddling? What's happening? Tides indicate some sort of cycle, all of this. And those are the kinds of things, those that the water and the tides maybe would be more likely to show up in a poem, but you never know. I don't know what you're going to read in 2 weeks. So, just think about it. If you see a lot of water, think, is this clarifying or is it muddling? Does somebody come out of this water, rain, storm, ocean, lake? First of all, do they come out, the awakening? And secondly, when they come out, are they more confused or more clear? Okay, these are the sorts of things that are created by the author. So the last slide were the sorts of things that you would find just everywhere. Like anybody could use it, anyone could use it well, they've been used, but people have fresh takes on them all the time. But then a contextual symbol would be created by the author for that text. And so you would have to identify it, and that's where motif might come in. And so the difference between a symbol and a motif, for example, Janie's pear tree, which I just said, the hurricane, those things are symbols. They happen, and although you don't see it once, because you can't establish symbolism just by being exposed to something once, but although they happen, it's one idea. And so it doesn't spread out. It's not a motif of a pear tree because you don't see pear trees all over the place. She has this pear tree and it symbolizes her development and maturation as a woman. The same with things fall apart. The yams, you do see yams all over, but they always mean the same thing. Yams represent wealth, which is a cultural symbol for them, but also one that Achebe has emphasized by his use and by Okonkwo's both acquisition and then also loss of yams. Same with Othello. And so his naivety is important because it's a character trait, obviously, but it's also going to be his downfall. And so that's what makes it more symbolic than just the fact that he is a naive person. The fact that he's able to be manipulated is a character trait, but the fact that gullibility and vulnerability is his downfall in a very tragic hero archetypal way is symbolic. 1984, and I'm just taking these from things that we've discussed before, things that you might be reading right now, and probably you're doing this work, but just to think about the way that these symbols and motifs were created gets you ready to think about meeting them in a new passage quickly. So here's an example. Winston's paperweight. Winston has a paperweight. It symbolizes his kind of eye-opening experience to kind of what Oceania really is. But there's also a very gray feeling to Oceania. So that would be more like a motif because multiple things are gray and dreary and exhausted. And so that idea that everything's kind of washed out, that creates a motif of faded, dreary feeling. And so there are multiple things. If you were going to write about the whole book, you would have not only multiple exposures, but also multiple access points to the drabbery, which is not quite a word, but that would be a motif, whereas the paperweight would be a symbol. Same in The Handmaid's Tale. You could say that red is a symbol, but it's part of a motif of colors because every color that every kind of woman wears has a reason that it's that color, right? So the red goes with the blood and the green goes with the growth of things, the care of things. That's why the Marthas wear green and the unwomen wear gray because they just aren't, right? They just are like shadows of women. So that kind of thing. So again, that's how a group of symbols would create a motif. And so if you think about motifs as like, motifs are also in music and they come up, whatever the music is when something happens in a movie, like the Jaws, if you know the Jaws, theme, or if you think about movies that have a similar melody that happens every time one person comes on screen or every time somebody's angry again, that kind of thing. Same in colors with Gatsby, yellow, green, those both become symbolic. And again, repeated symbols make motifs. Motif is French for pattern. And so if you think about this as a pattern, sort of like diction, right? You can have an example of figurative language that means something, but if you have a pattern of it, then you can talk about diction. So in that same way, if you have something that represents a greater idea, then you have a symbol. But if you have a pattern of that idea being represented multiple ways or multiple perspectives, then you have a motif. Okay. So good, that went by quickly. Every week, every stream, I'm like, I'm gonna give them time to write, and then I talk too much. Also, you know, questions come up, whatever. So this is called The Flowers. You may have read it before, but again, it's heavily symbolic, like kind of overly in a way, but I wanted to show you how all of these things kind of come together to make meaning. And so even if I just read these first two paragraphs, so again, the passage is linked at the call to action, and I'm gonna put some questions up. I'm gonna give you time to read it, because again, we should be reading in about 10 minutes. I don't know, yeah. So here's a benefit of this year's exam, and that is you can do what you want with the text. You know, before you used to not be able to have highlighters, you could only have a pen and a pencil. So that's a thing. Okay, so this is called The Flowers. It's written by Alice Walker. It's written in the 70s. And we're looking for symbolism. So we're going to look for all the symbolism that we see. We're going to look for all the ideas that have connotations, right? All the places, people, settings that have any kind of connotations, and then we're going to try to weed out what doesn't matter. Also think of the title, The Flowers. What do flowers symbolize? That's a real question. I'm really asking, what do flowers symbolize? Okay, the weather is repeated a lot, must symbolize something. So you started reading. Flowers are purity, flowers are sun and warmth, or that was weather. Either way, flowers need sun. Flowers like look at the sun, right? They open themselves to the sun. Flowers bloom in springtime. So again, growth or change, absolutely, right? So, maybe we have some growth or change. Okay, so I'm going to, yes, she lives on a farm in the South. Right. Why do we think South? Because warm, also farm, right? It's a more rural area. Okay, in the country. The warm sun demonstrates it being less refined, okay, because you can get all that sun. All right, what else do we see? What time of year is it? She's happy with the harvesting of the crops. What might that mean? Okay, so summertime, is it? I don't. We know that some things being harvested. Some things are harvested in the summer, some things are harvested in the fall, but peanuts, squash, corn, are fall crops. Harvest is usually a fall thing. Okay. We know that it's warm, right? And so again, like that, I think that, but it only matters when it matters, right? So we know that it's warm. We know that it's not winter, that's for sure. We know that it is a beautiful day, right? Which, if it's in the South, in the country, may not be summer because, I mean, depending on who you are, but it feels more like springy. So the harvest of the corn and cotton, peanuts and squash made each day a golden surprise. There we've got gold. And so we've got this real like warm colors thing happening. Corn, peanut, squash, all, golden feelings. Their colors are warm. They're not cool colors. Okay. She's 10, so she's innocent. Yes. She's got a stick for company. So what does that say about her as a character? Maybe she's lonely, right? You said that it's at the same time. So she's 10 years old. She's out on this farm. Maybe she has a friend, but it doesn't seem like it because she's out with her short knobby stick and, playing with chickens. She has chickens that she likes, which is a very rural concept even. And so what's the symbolism of country of rural versus urban? Okay, she seems to find happiness in the finer and smaller things in life. I don't think that was in response. Oh, what is Myop? I've never heard anybody named Myop before. Okay, yeah, so assuming that's a good point. She strikes out the animals and she doesn't have real friends, which may suggest some things about her character. What might that suggest about her character? She's striking at chickens she likes. So, is she abusing them? Is she saying hey to them? This matters, right? We're trying to see who she is. She's 10. So I have the feeling she's kind of crazy. Okay, well, maybe she's crazy, but she's not even old enough to be crazy. Only, okay. So myop means blind in French. And some people have myopia. That's a eye syndrome. Right. So kids just do that. They strike out at chickens. Okay. So maybe she's blind, or maybe this has something to do with how she's able to see. And so don't get freaked out if you didn't know that myop means blind in French, right? That's fine. You don't have to catch every single thing. You won't have to catch enough to write about. So if you knew that, then you might be able to have that prediction, that foreshadowing, and that symbolism of her name. But if you don't, then you get at that same idea some other way. Okay. So no wonder she's using a stick. Maybe she is blind, but it doesn't say that she's blind. And so nothing existed for her but song. And so those sorts of things. So we have a bunch of ideas that can go. So she doesn't have friends, or she's out by herself. She's working out the beat of a song on the fence. It doesn't lean toward crazy or, future serial killer. Right? She's playing with the chickens. She's beating out a little, making beats on the fence. She felt light and good in the warm sun. She's 10. Nothing existed for her but her song and the stick, right? Ta-de-ta-ta. Okay. So I want you, but again, the point was it was mentioned how the sun felt. That's true. That is true. There's no description of what things, of all the language, of all the imagery. They're not really images, most of them, right? Even the short knobby stick, that's something that you can feel. Okay. So we're prepared for her to be blind, literally. But even if she's not blind, literally, she's 10. So she's a little bit blind figuratively. You know what I mean? Okay. So, and again, 10-year-olds are not reliable narrators. And this is not first person, but just know that 10-year-olds don't see, they're just not built to, an average 10-year-old, they're not built to see all the evil in the world. That's why we have to tell them not to talk to strangers. So there's an innocence here that's being emphasized. Okay. So I'm going to set you free to read the rest of the passage. It's not too long. I want you to read it. I'm going to give you 10 minutes. 10 minutes to read it and come back with as many symbols as possible. There are some questions at the end of the passage, and I don't need you to come back with answers because that's what we'll work through. 10 minutes will be 6:45. So 10 minutes to read, collect the symbols, see if any of our predictions come out to be, and try to figure out what all these things mean, what all these symbols, how these symbols contribute to the meaning of the story. 10 minutes. Okay, so we've got 3 minutes. Yes, thank you. So somebody wanted, but so is the SWBS. So Myop, what did Myop want? What stopped her from getting that? And what happened as a result? All right. So we have some things getting dropped in the chat. And so if you are still collecting symbols, go ahead and put them in as you see them. I'm just going to read them out because I want us to all help each other in what we see. Okay. So first of all, the first question was, oh, I can stop the music. Okay, so we've seen, yes, that she's not blind. A couple people dropped that in. She's not blind. So although right before we took the reading break, Samantha said she's blind to the world and to her future, which is pretty, like, that's the 10-year-old's viewpoint, right? They don't think about what's coming up, right? And so if she's blind to the world and to her future, then we could start to think that maybe there's going to be some growth. Maybe she is the flower. We don't know, but we do now. Okay, so she's not blind. The white teeth, blue denim, and green belt contrast with the otherwise warm colors to show that the day was good until she finds the body. So that would be a shift, right? And we could identify that as a shift, and we could identify that as a complexity in her experience of the day, right? That it starts off warm and glowy and then cools considerably when she runs into this body. She's not hesitant with the body and only sees the beauty of nature. So that's a really interesting point, Madison, and I would like for you to pinpoint what you think that means. So her embrace of the body as part of nature, what does that say about her? And what did we see that would let us know that that's who she is? That's a pretty abstract question, but I'm interested in that. So her not being hesitant and seeing the beauty of nature is a very abstract idea. So what I'm asking is, what are the concrete evidence points that you think support that? And also what it means. Rusty cupboards mean that they're not particularly comfortable life. They live a not particularly comfortable lifestyle. They're sharecroppers, yes, not long after the Civil War, and had to find means to survive in the South. We don't know Myop's ethnicity. We don't, so it must not matter. So that's interesting. But sharecropper does definitely give us an indication. Remains of a rotten noose and body that mean that the person Myop found was lynched. Yes. I wouldn't call that symbolic because it's not an abstract idea that the person was lynched. It just is, right? We just understand it. It's an inference that we've made. Myop laid down her flowers, her naivety and innocence was gone, and the trauma took its place. Yes, absolutely. So we're seeing this. Someone said in the earlier that flowers equal purity, and then so if flowers are purity and youth and freshness and spring, when she lays them down, then that's it. And that last sentence, somebody said something about that. Once she strayed beyond her familiarity, she found something that shattered her innocence and made her see the real world, which I think ties into the last sentence, right? So if summer is the highest point of the year, then she kind of skipped over that high point of her life. Like that's it, right? She's entering what would be maturity. So autumn would be the maturity of her life. And so she's got this like life lesson here. And so she's no longer the innocent girl who plays with chickens, right? Since myop means blind, I think when she found the remains, she wished she was blind and didn't have to see what she saw. Right. So what else? Let's explore this. I think myop is more symbolic of her innocence. Yes. Like to symbolize nearsightedness because she's so young. And myopia, I believe, is nearsightedness. I think that's what it's called. When you're nearsighted, you're myopic. Right. And so, yes, she has a very small frame of view, right? Her mindset is small because she's 10. And it says that she's 10. So that's an important, not even like what we call preteen, like very young and not expected to know of the world. But when you live in the South and you're a sharecropper, you get to know the world, right? So she's got this life lesson she's learning. The roses, the flower symbolizes innocence. Yes. The rose sliding down the stream could foreshadow that her innocence is going to go away. All of these things. Oh, yes, thank you. It says the stick clutched in her dark brown hand. Thank you. About ethnicity. She's discovered death. Okay, so here we go, Madison. I think her not being hesitant is shown when she only describes the man of how he physically looks, not adding her opinions of how disgusting and smelly he is. She instead sees him for who he is, which is just a corpse. Interesting. Gazed around the spot with interest. Do you think that is we have a shift here? I think everybody found that there's some sort of shift between Maya being innocent and blind and nearsighted, and then her coming across this body and it shifting her life, really. And so the question is, the way that she sees the man, is that on the innocent side, or is that on the mature side? Or is it implying, sorry, I just lost the word. Is it implying that that's how it is? Right. So though she can look at this man kind of with nonchalance, almost like, oh, another dead man in the backyard. You know what I mean? Like in the place that she plays. I think it was uncharacteristically mature. If I found a dead body at the age of 10, I think I would have just screamed. Exactly. Right. So if I found a dead body today, I think I would scream. And she's just like, oh, interesting. So I think yes. So thank you. So that's that full idea, Madison, that I was trying to kind of get you to put into the chat. I don't know if you had it all in your head, but this is her coming of age. Absolutely. And so this is the way that she comes, and it's very calm, you know, and I think that says a lot about the writing. So we could definitely talk about that, like the diction of the description, to connote her immediate comfort with it or acceptance of it, right? This is the way it is. She didn't throw the flowers. She didn't, she didn't even make like a grave for him, like lay them down around him or anything. She's just like, oh, man, that's it. And I think that part of the implication, again, is that in this time of the setting in the South, on a warm day, that people had to be uncharacteristically mature. Okay. So we'll skip somebody wanted, but so Myop wanted to, enjoy life and rat-a-tat-tat on the fence, but she found a dead body, so she matured faster than she should have, right? If we're going to talk about theme, what would you say theme is? Very nice. Sumi says at the beginning of the story, there's not a whole lot of visual imagery. She's kind of stumbling around the world in this blind innocence that's sort of dreamy, while seeing the body wakes her up. Yes, in quotes. There are shifts to a lot of visual imagery to show that she can now see the world for what it is. That's a thesis right there. Absolutely. She is blind as she should be, right? Like it's not like she's uncharacteristically immature. She's exactly who she should be, and then she is awakened. Absolutely. And so that would definitely be an argument, right? That there's a shift from tactile to visual imagery to show Myop's loss of innocence. Yeah. And then if we have theme in a prose analysis essay, theme is only significant as broader context, right? It doesn't need to go into your. Okay, so what about loss of innocence? Yeah, so theme, coming of age, loss of innocence, absolutely. But if we're going to write about those things, we would have to make an actual statement about the introduction of that idea, right? So the loss of innocence or coming of age, and those are, two ways to look at the same thing. Loss of innocence, coming of age, maturity. What is this text saying about coming of age or loss of innocence? Not everything is rainbow and butterflies. Absolutely. So what does that mean? Put that in a sentence. Somebody take this idea of loss of innocence, not everything is rainbows and butterflies, and put it in a sentence that tells how this story applies to us all. Maybe start with when. Inequality affects everyone. Okay. When? Why? So the push that I want to give in theme, and this is, I'm thinking again about putting this idea into a broader context, because we understand that Myop has lost her innocence. We understand the fact of her running across this dead body. We even understand how the literary devices and the words and the symbols show that. Like, we definitely have that down. And so we're not going to put it into an essay necessarily, but we have that idea. Like, between all of us, we understand that generally speaking, the symbolism of the day and the time, time as in era, right? The symbolism associated with the day and the time, because it starts in the morning and it gets to noon, and she wants to go back to morning. And I feel like that sentence is very important because, again, there's some symbolism there in terms of what morning means and why you would want to return to it, because she does lose her innocence, and she's realizing it, and she wants to go back to what it was before she understood how hot life had to be. So there's our thesis that, something, again, I want to collect your thoughts, but I don't want to give you thoughts. I don't want to make up thoughts that aren't yours. But the idea that the imagery shows what we mean when growing up. Okay, so I just spot myself. I do that too much. The idea that the imagery conveys, the symbolism in the imagery convey that Myop's experience with the body matured her quickly, right? So that's an argument. And so I feel like you would be able to support that with your own interpretations of the imagery. You could talk about colors, you could talk about blindness, you could talk about innocence versus understanding. All of those things would be very valuable. And so, yes, so these ideas that are now coming into the chat would definitely be how you make that a broader context and show that you understand that literature is always about everyone, because that's really what theme says. I see how I have been Myop also, right? Or this Myop's experience is something that happens to everyone. So when growing up, people are exposed to unwanted lessons. Yes, I think even push that exposure to unwanted lessons is a catalyst for growing up, right? Yes. So thank you. Did the win help? I feel like things started rolling after I said start with win. When exposed to death, we mature as we find out innocence in life doesn't last forever. Yes, good. The essay would be less about the fact that Myop loses her innocence, but like how symbols represent Myop's loss of innocence. Yes, Sumi, absolutely. So the prompt that I put here is write a well-developed essay that analyzes how Walker uses literary devices to portray Myop's complex relationship with her environment. An environment really could be as big as you want it to be. when I did that on purpose, because you could definitely bring in sharecropping south, but you could also just talk about that day. And that relationship is complicated by her interaction with the man, right? She had one experience before the man and another experience after the man. And that right there is the shift that breaks up your essay organization and also meaning, the complexity. So you would have that same thesis about the imagery or about the symbolism or the setting and how that shows her loss of innocence. And then you could just break it up into the sides of the relationship. Any questions, comments, last thoughts? Except for the fact that that discussion slows the process down, I really just wish that College Board would just be like, hey, get together with your friends and write an essay. Like, they might as well just be like, hey, do this together. If I were to pick a theme, one giant book club, exactly. If I were to pick a theme from the ones listed here, or if I were to create my own theme, I think my theme would be just a little bit of everybody's. I think just that idea about unwanted lessons is probably most in line with what I was thinking. When you encounter unfamiliar and I'm having problems with my words today, but when you encounter unfamiliar and kind of scary experiences, that your eyes are opened and maturity, once maturity kind of begins, there's no going back. Like, maturity is a door that opens when it needs to and closes right behind you. Bars. And again, remember that when you're thinking about theme for this prose analysis essay, you don't need to discuss theme. You just need to include the broader context of the argument that you made about the character itself, herself. I'm trying to think about the street essay, and I'm confused how you would characterize the relationship here with her environment. Could it be something like Myop's shifting environment causes her to lose her innocence? Yes. Or you could name the shifts. I mean, the sides of the shift. You could say that Myop's relationship was one thing and became another due to her loss of innocence. That the shift itself, like you could name the sides the way that with a but or a yet. Myop's relationship with her environment is, warm and welcoming until it becomes unfamiliar, causing her to lose her innocence. Can it be juxtaposition? It could be. It could be. I think Sumi is our resident juxtaposition expert, with the dark and light with Clarice, and then now the colors. So yes, you could definitely argue that. The only thing about juxtaposition is that it would have to be an extended juxtaposition in order to be important enough, right? Because you want to be able to find a few pieces of evidence to explain that juxtaposition. So to compare the squash and the overalls wouldn't be enough. So you'd have to find more warm and more cool, or more welcoming and more alienating. So you could show what exactly is juxtaposed. Okay, well, some of you have a packed night and it's 7:02, so you're late for your next date. So I will see you on Monday, and Monday be prepared to write, because we're going to, I promise we will get a whole essay or a very good portion of it together on Monday. So enjoy your weekend. Watch some replays. Watch free streams about evidence and commentary so you're ready to put paragraphs together. And I'll see you Monday. Thank you. You too. Have a great day or night, wherever you are.